Before we move on to the next section, I do want to go over some of the other modifiers that we have within Max. There's a lot of them, so I kind of want to briefly just touch on some of them. If you notice, we've got selection modifiers that allow us to just select parts of the mesh. For example, as we were doing before, where we can select part of the cylinder, we can just do that using mesh select. We also have patch and mesh editing, which allow us to edit the mesh and do some other things such as smooth the mesh, tessellate, for those who are familiar with polygonal modeling, optimize, which was a polygon reduction type of modifier. We can also convert objects from one type of object to another. We have meshes, patches, and polys. We'll be getting into that just in a little bit as to what those are. Animation modifiers. These are a lot of these are for character animation and special effects. For example, skin allows us to bind a skin using bones. Flex is an automatic, kind of a real rough type of soft body dynamics. Morpher allows us to do facial animation. UV coordinates, those allow us to do operations relating to textures. We'll get into those a little bit later, but this allows us to apply mapping coordinates, that sort of thing. Cache tools, those are for particle systems. Subdivision surfaces, we'll be getting into those fairly quickly. We'll be working a lot with mesh smooth, which allows us to subdivide a mesh and make it smooth. Freeform deformers, let me go ahead and show you what those are. Basically, it's an FFD, which allows us to modify any object with basically by warping the space around it. So with this, I can I've created a 4x4x4 box around this cylinder, and if I go over here to the stack, I can open this up, and I know I have control points that I can select and modify. So I can go ahead and select those, and if I right click, I can move. So again, I can modify a mesh fairly simple in a kind of in a global shape, kind of affect the shape of something fairly globally. So this is great for just kind of redeforming, like if you have a standard model and you want to kind of reshape it globally. This is a great way to start doing that. A lot of people, this is one of my favorite ways of modeling, is to use a freeform deformation, because it allows you to create very, very broad changes in a model. So that's one way of doing it. Now with freeform deformations, we have several. We have a 2x2, a 3x3, a 4x4, and then user definable, which allows you to put in as many points as you want. Parametric deformers, we've gone through a lot of these. In fact, let me go ahead and get rid of this freeform deformation here and go through to some of the other parametric deformers. We went through bend and taper. Twist, I'm going to show you what that does. Basically, just twists the object. So obviously on the cylinder it's not showing you much, but let's go ahead and add a bend to it. And as we add the bend, you can see how the twist now kind of gives it kind of a spaghetti, kind of a noodly shape. Other parametric deformers, noise is a very important one. We use that a lot for creating things like terrain, which basically it just adds noise to the object and kind of just randomly deforms the surface. So you have a couple of options here. You have the strength of it in the X, Y, and Z axis, as well as a scaling option as to how much that affects it. So you just need to play with these parameters. You can also animate this to make something vibrate. Some people use this to create like a rough surface, like a water surface or something like that. There's a number of ways to use it. It's great for creating rocks. Take a sphere, add noise to it, and you basically have a rock. So what are some other ones? Ripple. That just basically puts ripples in something. Notice how creating... This probably works best on a plane. Let's go ahead and create a plane. Give it some detail. And then let's go ahead and go ahead over to our modify panel and add ripple. As you can see now, this is probably a little bit better. You see this is another way to make nice wavy surfaces. And there's a lot of other ones here. Skew, Spherify is a great one. It basically brings everything into all the points of an object into a sphere. It's great for kind of rounding things off. And there's some other ones here. Surface editing. Again, these are ones for displacement, that sort of thing. NURBS editing, if you're going to get into that. Radiosity. That's when you're working with Max's radiosity and then some camera options. So there's a number of different modifiers that we can work with.